Alright, hello once again. This is Jeff Scott of Rankin Technical College, and as part of the Rankin Technical College AWD, or Application and Website Development program, and in particular the AWD 1111.NET Framework with Web Databases class, I have been creating a series of video presentations based on the textbook that will be used for the class during the fall 2019 semester. The textbook is Pro ASP.NET MVC 5 in a press text by Mr. Adam Freeman, and we are now up to Chapter 9. That's what we're beginning right now. So we are working our way through the Sports Score project. We have set up the project, we've set up the navigation, we are now going to complete the cart. Next we go into mobile, then admin, security and finishing touches, and finally deployment. So again, onward and upward to Chapter 9, completing the cart. And the author says here, in this chapter we're going to continue to build out the Sports Store example app. Previously we added basic support for a shopping cart. Now we're going to improve on and complete the shopping cart functionality. Alright. Next thing that's in there, we have talked about this a little bit, but now we're going to look at it in depth, and that is model binding. Again, I don't want to sit and read to you, but I guess I am going to somewhat anyway. The author says here that the MVC framework uses model binding to create C# objects from HTTP requests in order to pass them as parameters to the various different action methods. As mentioned here, this is how the MVC framework processes forms. As an example, it looks at the parameters of the action method that has been targeted and uses what's referred to as a model binder to get the form values sent by the browser and convert them to the type of the parameter with the same name before passing them to the action method. Model binders, as it says here, can create C# types from any information available in the request. This is one of the central features of the MVC framework. The author says he is going to create a custom model binder to improve the cart controller class. He likes using the session state feature of the cart controller to store and manage cart objects, which were set up in Chapter 8, but he does not like the way we have to go about it. It does not fit the rest of the application model, which is based around action method parameters. Really, that's pretty much what, from what I've seen, that all ASP.NET MVC framework projects are based off of. We cannot properly unit test a cart controller class unless we mock the session parameters of the base class, and that means mocking a whole bunch of other stuff. But to solve this problem, we're going to create a custom model binder that obtains the cart object contained in the session data. The MVC framework will then be able to create cart objects and pass them as parameters to the action method, so an entire cart object. The model binding feature is powerful and flexible. More in Chapter 24. So, I create a custom model binder by implementing system.web.mvc.iModelBinder interface. To create this, we're adding a new folder to the UI that's going to be called, under infrastructure, that's going to be called binders. And we're going to create a cart model binder.cs class. So let's get to it. So in our web UI, there's our infrastructure. We want to come through here and add a new folder. Sorry about that. That new folder is called binders. And in binders, we want to right mouse click and choose add, go to class, and again, the name of the class we want to add is cart model binder.cs. All right, so as we move our way through here, the contents of the new file are shown in listing 9.1 that start on the bottom of page 227 and go on to 228. So let's do it. As always, we get an error because this is incomplete in its current form, so we have to add this. Again, no red, always a good sign. All right. So, to put this in perspective, the author says here the iModel binder interface defines one method. The one method, so there's the iModel binder interface, and it defines the method bind model. The two parameters that are provided right here, they make creating the domain model object possible. The first one, the controller context, provides access to all information that the controller class has, including the details of the request from the client. The second one, the model binding context, gives information about the model object we're being asked to build and some tools for making the binding process easier. The one the author says he's concerned with, basically, or interested in, is the controller context. It has an HTTP context property, which in turn has a session property that allows you to get and set session data. We can obtain the cart object associated with the user session by reading a value from the session data and create a cart if there is not one there already. We need to tell the MVC framework that it can use the cart model iBinder class to create instances of a cart. We do this in the application start method of global.asax, which I believe, let's do a file save all, that we're going to come over here, and there's our global ASAX. So we're going to need these two using statements shown right here. There those are. They'll probably turn gray again because they're not currently being used. All right, namespace. Yep, it looks like we're in the right place. So after our route config, we want to add this line. Right there. We can now update the cart controller to remove the getCart method and rely on the model binder to provide the controller with cart objects. All right. So the changes are shown on pages 229 and 230. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to find my cart controller. Which is right here. We created that, remember, in the last chapter. And what I'm going to do is replace the code that's in there with the code that is shown in our textbook on pages 229 and I believe 230. Yep. Now, do we have to do it this way? No. But I want to make sure I'm not missing anything, so let's copy that. Alright, let's get down. Don't worry about the fact that we've got errors because we're not done. You have to add the code that's right there. Alright, again, no red. Always a great sign. So, let's jump back up towards the top here. Alright, the author says we've removed the getCart method and added a cart parameter to each of the action methods. Don't have to go through all of them, I guess you get the idea. When the MVC framework receives a request that requires, for example, the add to cart method to be invoked, it begins by looking at the parameters for the action method. It looks at the list of binders available and tries to find one that can create instances of each parameter type. The custom binder is asked to create a cart object, and it does this by working with the session state feature. Between the custom binder and the default binder, the MVC framework is able to create the set of parameters required to call the action method. This allows us to refactor the controller so that it has no knowledge of how cart objects are created when requests are received. That's a good thing. Again, it's that separation of concerns, all right, and it also involves that decoupling that we've talked about earlier. There are several benefits to using a custom model binder like this. The first is, again, we've separated the logic used to create the cart from that of the controller, which allows you to change the way that we store cart objects without having to change the controller. A second benefit is that any controller class that works with cart objects can simply declare them as action method parameters to take advantage of this custom model binder. Finally, we can now unit test the cart controller without needing to mock a list of ASP.NET plumbing. So the next thing that's going to be done in here, starting on page 230, is to unit test the cart controller. Oops. And as the author says here, we can unit test the cart controller class by creating cart objects, passing them to the action methods. We want to test three different aspects: add to cart, are we being redirected, and the URL. So here are the unit tests. Let's grab this, copy it to the clipboard. Let's bring up our unit test. This file is getting very big and we're not doing really anything with it. We've already got the using Mosq. We've got the domain aspect. We've got the controllers. We've got the MVC. We don't need any of this. All right, so let's jump down to the bottom here. We're going to add some new unit tests. Again, as mentioned several times, I'm doing this for what I would call completeness sake. So this one, as you can see, can we add to the cart? Here, adding a product cart to make sure that it's going to the right place. And here, can view cart contents, which is incomplete right now. But we will put the rest in there in just 1 second. All right. I think I've got a problem in here with my curlies, but at least I put everything in here. I'd have to go back and take a look at that. I'm not going to do that right now. All right. So we're up to page 232, where the author talks about completing the cart. And I believe before I go on with that one, since I'm at 16.5 minutes, we'll stop, and that'll be the focus of the next lesson.